Forge FC 2, Vancouver FC 1 on Saturday. Mitchell, you were there. This game was a lot of fun. Again, Forge making up a game in hand. So now they're on 13 games played, which was kind of looming for a little bit because there was that period when Ottawa dropped points and suddenly Forge were able to control their destiny and take over first place if they were to win that game in hand. And then it reversed back. Forge dropped points against York. So the best they could do was come within 1 point. They are now 1 point back of the top spot in the Canadian Premier League and 13 games unbeaten to start the year. Mitch, again, you were there. You've watched this Forge team live a lot this year. They're very good, as they often are. But what specifically is so good about them this year?
Well, I think this game is kind of a microcosm of their entire season to this point, which is the fact that it's not their best performance. How many times have we said that this season? And they still picked up 3 or 1 point in a match. But these are the games where in past years you could kind of get at Forge. They had a busy week. They had Canadian Championship coming up. They were rotating their squad. They make 4 changes in this game and bring in some players who hadn't played all that much, or in the case of, Dino Bontis had never played before at the professional level. And they get strong performances from all of them. Bontis makes 3 saves, earns a clean sheet. Obviously, he has to go at the 89th minute before they concede their goal. Peyton comes in and plays fullback at first. Then there's an injury. He can move into midfield. David Chouanière starts for the first time in 8 games after coming back from injury. Is probably the best player on the park and, creates their first goal. Like, this is a team right now that just wave after wave. It doesn't really matter who you're putting out there. And you look, before the game, the guys who aren't in the 18 roll out. You got Yacine Kalela, Maliko Labi-Belou, Alessandro Jabrapor, and Nana Mpoma, who aren't even in the team right now, and they still go out and they get 3 points. So I think it's really that depth of this group right now that's, changing everything. And then late in this game, second half, they bring on Maxime Fillon and Tristan Borges and Amadou Kone. And 2 minutes later, Borges heads a ball back across for Fillon. He gets his first Canadian Premier League goal. That stands as the game winner. Kone does an excellent job at helping them see out this match with, some of his on-ball ability. So this is such a deep Forge squad. Might be the deepest Forge squad ever. And that's why, even when they rotate heavily, they're still picking up results, and they still are finding ways to, fight back in games, to get ahead in games. And it's just incredibly impressive what they're doing right now. And as Charlie's kind of pointed out, a little annoying as well, because we sort of would love to be talking about something different at this stage in, the CPL, but it's a full credit to the way that club continues to be built, that their identification of talent, the way they continue to hold on to players as well. We can talk about, Alex Ashniotti-Johnson making his 200th appearance, first ever in CPL to do that. But it's just such a credit to that club once again.
Yeah, I think at a certain point you have to kind of just sit back and admire what a great team is doing with the players they have. We've talked about how many new players Forge have incorporated. Look, just in the starting 11 against Vancouver here, you've got Rama, Nimick, Peyton, Masunda, and Wright, who all weren't there last year, right? And they come in and it's really no different. And we talk about this Forge team, and sometimes it's actually hard to notice that they've rotated their squad, right? Like, they put out a lineup an hour before a game. You're like, oh yeah, that's most of Forge's guys. That's a really strong team. And then you realize, oh, Moba Bully's not there. Or, oh, Alessandro Jabrapor is not in there. Or Tristan Borges isn't in there. And it's just wild how many players are starting quality on this team that would be starting quality on any Canadian Premier League team that have to fight for minutes at this club and just are so willing to spend that time on the bench to come in and compete in training. Even Tristan Borges talked about it in his press conference on Monday ahead of this Canadian Championship game against Montreal. He's been fighting for his minutes. He's been coming off the bench the last few games while he recovers from injury, but he sees players like Jose Masunda and Nana Mpoma and how well they've been playing in his absence in some of these attacking roles. And he's like, it's hard. It's really hard. Nobody at Forge is really entitled to a starting role, except maybe Cal Becker at certain points, maybe. But nobody's really entitled to that role, and it kind of keeps them all on their toes and makes them all better. So to that point, AGR, I might have put you on a spot and put you in Bobby's shoes last week. Was it you, or did I do that to Mitch last week?
Might have been me, but
I think it was you. So I'm going to do it again. I don't know what a Forge best 11 looks like. Can you help me here? What do you think you would if you were starting a final tomorrow as Bobby Smirniotis, you had everybody fit and healthy, what would you do?
yeah, it's a good question because, like you mentioned, there's been deep Forge teams before. I think the big difference is just leadership as well, because all these guys are leaders. Like I think before there was, you kind of knew it was Kyle Becker, as some of the maybe the first year guy like David Edgar, of course Achinoti Janssen, Daniel Crutzen, but then some of those guys moved on and it created a bit of a leadership void. So many guys are leaders, but I think if you look, there are some clear leaders at each position. I think you got Kolelit in goal. That back four, you probably got Rama, Nimic, Achinoti Janssen. Yevremovich is my four. Olabi
Yeah.
Belu made a heck of a shout with how good he's
See, it's
been.
hard, right?
It's hard, but I guess if the only argument is if you're putting Achinoti Janssen in the midfield. Peyton's been stepping up a lot over the last few weeks and is making that a discussion. That's the four is probably doable. Midfield, that leaves you Becker, Hojabapour, double pivot. Becker been playing deeper. And then I think that middle three, it's probably some combination of Ampoma, Borges, and Babuli. I know Masunda's obviously been fantastic, but I think a healthy Borges, even just the last 2 weeks, has made a difference. Then I'm forgetting Chouanier there too, but Ampoma's been so great. And then you got right up front. So definitely some battles like that left back, that winger battle. Those two are really ones I'm looking at. But that's where competition has been so crucial. And I think depth, especially with wingers come and go. Injuries always seem to happen to wingers for whatever reason. That's a position you want depth at. And I think it is pretty ridiculous that you have a quote unquote best 11 and Chouanier and Masunda are your backups. Those are two guys that pretty much everyone on the team or everyone in this league would love to have as a starter. And I think it shows to the lovely problem that Smirniotis must have every week in training, where it's like, all right, guys, let's split into 2 11s for some intra squad. And it's like, Chouanier and Masunda against Borges, Babuli on one side. You're just trying to figure out who the heck of those 4 you should put on a team sheet for any given game.
I mean, yeah, man. If you split up your squad into 2 for intra squad game and training, like you might have 2, possibly even playoff quality CPL teams in there, which is just terrifying. For just some tests coming up. They've got CF Montreal on Wednesday night. That's a big one. And Bobby talked a little bit yesterday about how at this point, it's not a surprise when Forge come out and get results against MLS teams. It's for them internally an expectation. Now they have a lead in this quarterfinal. They fully expect, not in a cocky way, but in a deliberate and businesslike way, they expect to be in the semifinal of the Canadian Championship, and to an extent, they are kind of expecting to be in the final of this tournament, and they certainly have the capacity to do so. If they get through that, that's very impressive on Wednesday night, and then after that, next Saturday, it's a trip to Ottawa, right? They travel to play the best team in a Canadian Premier League currently, the first place side. That will be a game where the winner will be in first place, right? Forge are just 1 point back, and that's going to be game 4, first place. And honestly, if Forge go into Ottawa and win that game, then I might start to hop on the believing that we might have an invincible team on our hands. The CPL is weird, and you always lose weird games in a CPL, but Forge just aren't this year. But anyway, we will leave Forge with that. Make sure you check them out on Wednesday night against CF Montreal as they try to not even make history anymore, just try to do it again and beat CF Montreal, an MLS team in Montreal. Check that out Wednesday night, 7:30 Eastern.